And everybody, so today I'm going to be talking about the suicide podcast. So things that I didn't know about suicide or just hadn't thought about. The statistics for suicide are very underrated. They mention this in the podcast, and it makes sense when you think about it. Um, Often suicide isn't reported as being suicide because it is such a touchy subject and such a sensitive subject. Typically, suicide is reported as an accident or someone dying from an unknown sickness. It's usually covered up, and so the statistics are very skewed because of this. But I had no idea with the statistics that we have right now that we believe that 1 in every 17 seconds someone attempts suicide. That is crazy to me. Also, suicide is very high among older adults. That is not something that I had thought about. I fully expected the statistics to be reflective of it being very high in the teenage population, but I didn't consider it being very high in older adults who are trying to kind of euthanize themselves. Also, something that was interesting that they mentioned in the podcast, with more attempts, they become more lethal. And when someone comes into the counseling office, they talked a lot about how to evaluate them, how to talk to them, how to be wary of that they might really be seriously considering suicide. So one thing they said that I had heard before, the more realistic the situations are that they're discussing, that the more realistic they are idolizing suicide and they're thinking about how they actually will do it, then they're more likely to do it. Anything that surprised me, like I said, the statistic, I was really surprised about how high that was and that it's probably even higher. I was surprised, but really appreciated just kind of not how casually they talked about suicide, but they weren't so scared to talk about it. And it is something that we have to talk about. It's not a matter of if we will deal with it as counselors, but when we'll have to deal with it. What about the topic worries me the most? I think I'm most afraid of not being prepared to deal with it. Two things that I'm most afraid of, actually. I'm most afraid of how to recognize it correctly in my clients. Like, what if I miss it? What if, they commit suicide and I could have prevented it? So just that pressure that comes with that. And then also how I deal with it after the fact. So when or if I have a client commit suicide, how am I going to get past that? That's kind of selfish, but that is, a big concern of mine. One last thing that I really liked was just, how they did touch on how we should be trained better for it, how the more realistic situations that we're presented with, the more prepared we will be. I fully agree with that. And just one thing I really didn't think of was the importance of, us really taking it seriously, because it can really affect us legally, malpractice, lawsuits. So it's just really important that we take it seriously, that we are prepared, that we are correctly documenting our time with clients. And so that's just some of the things I learned. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you later.